السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والعاقبة للمتقين، ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، إله الأولين والآخرين، وأشهد أن نبينا محمدا عبده ورسوله المصطفى الأمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على عبدك ورسولك محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. Welcome everyone to tonight's webinar. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal that you're all in good health, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you and your families, and especially since we are very close now to the beginning of the blessed month of Ramadan, which could potentially begin, I think, tomorrow night, if not then the night after. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He allows us to witness this month, and that Allah Azza wa Jal makes it a blessed month for us and our families and the Muslim Ummah, that Allah Azza wa Jal allows us to maximize this month in terms of what is on offer in terms of reward and the opportunity to do good deeds. So inshallah ta'ala, tonight's webinar is, as you can see, we titled it Ready for Launch. So we have been doing our repetitions now for a number of days, 4 days. We started on Monday. So hopefully, inshallah ta'ala, by the end of today or already, you would have done around 80 repetitions so far. And I hope that if you've been using the methodology that we've told you in the way that we've told you, by now you've seen and you've realized the benefits of it yourselves without us having to tell you anything further. And naturally, how, inshallah ta'ala, this will then progress. So tonight's webinar is really to speak about some of the practicalities as we go into our first weekend of memorizing. So we've spoken about the mindset, we've spoken about the method, and this weekend is really the first practical time that we're actually going to be able to interact with most of you in a live session where you can actually read to one of us as a teacher, and then we can see, inshallah ta'ala, how you're progressing. We're going to obviously speak about other aspects as well, inshallah ta'ala, today, but this is our main goal, bidhnillah ta'ala. As always, you have the Q&A, as you know, the Q&A in the Zoom webinar. Any questions that you have, any comments that you want to make, please feel free to do so. So let's begin, inshallah ta'ala. Two things I just want to stress before we continue with our actual content for tonight. The first thing is that a number of people are asking still about registrations, whether they're open or not. Yes, the registrations are open, and they may continue to be open. So anyone that comes in, if you know someone you've recommended go memorize to someone, they would just come in and follow the same methodology. Our repetition days are Monday to Friday. Our weekends are for memorizing and reading to teachers. So if someone, for example, wants to join now, they could join and then just start for Monday. So yeah, they'll be, like probably a week behind, but still they have the whole of Ramadan still left. And likewise, if someone was to join in Ramadan, like they would just slot into the same format that we are giving. And as we mentioned before, the weekdays will also be slightly flexible. So if someone did like 4 days of repetition and they joined Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they did the repetitions. Monday they want to read to us and then just start the next cycle, that'd be fine as well, inshallah ta'ala. So as I said last time, we're trying to be flexible and open with people. We want as many people to memorize the Quran. So we're doing our best not to really put any obstacles in the way of anyone that wants to join this program and wants to start memorizing the Quran. The second point then is on the Telegram group. We've announced a number of polls and released a number of polls. Those of you that have partaken in them, Jazakumullah khairan, I appreciate that you did. For those of you that haven't, please do so. The polls that we put up recently were about the timings that would are most suitable for people when it comes to the live drop-in sessions on the weekend. This is very important for us. As I said last time, we don't want just our teachers to be sitting in a slot for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and only 3 or 4 people are going to come in. The nature of a live drop-in session is that because we give you a time, you can come in at any time in between in that slot, right? So if it's an hour slot, you can come in at any time. But if only 2 people come in for that slot, it's not really a good use of time for our teachers. I'm sure they have, other things that they could also be doing. So we want to maximize the timing in that sense. So certain slots, if they don't work for most people, then we don't need to offer them, and that our teachers don't have to just sacrifice their time if it's not needed. So if you can please partake in the polls. The polls are on there's a topic on your Telegram group called Zoom for Sisters, Zoom for Brothers. You'll see the poll in there. Please, inshallah ta'ala, partake in that, because if there's not much responses or many responses and there's not certain slots that have been chosen, most likely they won't be offered. right? And so, as long as everyone's clear on that, then inshallah ta'ala, it's not an issue. Okay, so far this week, what we've been focusing on is number one, getting you used to a new method. Every new method sometimes takes a few days, to get into a rhythm. Especially for the first couple of days, there were many questions about exactly how to do repetitions. Does it work? What if this? What if that? That's natural. Whenever you learn a new methodology in any walk of life, it's going to take some time to get into it. So what you've been focusing on, inshallah ta'ala, this week and by the end of tomorrow is your daily repetitions 20 times a day. You would have done about 100 times by the end of this. So that's basically what we've been working on. We want you to have a solid foundation. And as I said, we wanted to give you a methodology that was relatively low pressure in the sense there's no pressure upon you to memorize every day. And what we want you to have then for is that flexibility, as some people told me personally that they couldn't do 20 times some days, they did 15, they did 16, they did 17, and then they just made them up the next day. And really, 20 is a very good gauge because for some people, less than 20 will be enough. As as we've also seen, some people are saying they feel like 20 is more than enough, that they've kind of like already started to memorize the verses without even having to try. And for some people, they may need slightly more, but 20 on average is very good. And it gives you that buffer that if you're going to go slightly over or less, inshallah ta'ala, is still going to work for you. So that's basically what we've been focusing on all this week, right? Repetition, repetition, repetition. And repetition is key. Repetition is king when it comes to having not only good memorization, but more importantly, good retention. We don't want you just to have hifz, because one of the most common problems in memorizing the Quran is you memorize, you forget. You memorize, you forget. And that's because you're memorizing every day, even if it's only 2 or 3 lines, but because you haven't given enough time to settle in your mind or in your brain and your memory, then it's not going to stay for very long. So the repetition method that we've given to you gives you enough days for you to actually be able to be strong. And I want to mention that point, by the way, also because some people are saying, oh, we feel like we can, after 3 days, we're ready to memorize. You may well be ready to memorize. But I would just say keep the methodology as it is, unless you find it extremely easy, in which case we'll speak about that also in a short while. But just keep to the methodology, because remember, the more repetitions you're doing, it's not just about the memorization. This will help you as you go into your revision cycle also. So part of revision is how strong your initial memorization was. The stronger your initial memorization, the stronger your ability to revise and your ability to retain, inshallah ta'ala. So, what are we going to do now next? Inshallah ta'ala, this weekend, as we said, on Saturday, we're going to have our live drop-in sessions, and on Sunday. On Saturday, you are going to memorize your target ayahs, whichever pathway you are on, pathway 1, 2, or 3, your target ayahs that you have been repeating all week. On Saturday, inshallah ta'ala, you will memorize those verses and those ayahs. Then you will attend one of our live drop-in sessions and you will read to a teacher. That is the program for this weekend, inshallah ta'ala, Saturday and Sunday. So, how to memorize, right? Some of you are going to feel like already you're ready to memorize. Some of you have already probably felt or realized that actually you kind of know the verses that you've been repeating all week. That is very normal, by the way. That is the desired result, right? We chose this method because hopefully for a good number of you, that's actually what's happening. And for the others, that's not happening for us because you need a bit longer for that methodology to come to you. You have to be patient. We know people from our personal experience, the first week they were like, no, it's not working. Second week, it's not working. Third week. By the fourth week, though, it started to work. It's just people are different. So don't be hasty. Just trust the process. For the vast majority of people, it will work. Just some will be quicker and some will take longer. So just stick with it, inshallah ta'ala, and you will find that once your mind, like kind of configures itself to this method, inshallah ta'ala, it will work. So you're going to feel that it's come together. We want you to start from Saturday memorizing. We're hoping that the vast majority of you will have memorized by Saturday and can start to read to us on Saturday. If you missed the day, if, for example, you're still finding it slightly difficult, then you can always do Sunday as well. But I would start on Saturday, because if you start on Saturday, even if you're struggling on Saturday, Sunday will be easier. If you don't start on Saturday, or you just take the day off and just do it on Sunday, I don't think that's necessarily the best methodology to use. So how to memorize? We want you to look over the lines, your target verses and ayahs 5 times by looking on Saturday, on the day that you're memorizing. So let's say Saturday. You're going to recite it 5 times by looking all of them, just as you've been doing 20 repetitions a day. You're going to do 5 repetitions on Saturday morning. Then you're going to close your Quran and you're going to try to recite those target ayahs from memory. One of two things is going to happen. The first is that either you're going to know them pretty much quite well. That's going to happen, inshallah, for a good number of you. You're just going to be like, okay, I know this now. You may get the odd mistake here or there. You can record yourself, ask someone to test you, whatever. But generally, you're going to have it pretty much there with the odd mistake here or there, two, three, four mistakes, depending on how many verses you're memorizing. I would say try not to get more than 3 mistakes in however many verses that you are memorizing. You shouldn't really be getting more than 3 mistakes if you can avoid it. So that's the first way. If that happens, alhamdulillah, you're done. Do it 3, 4 times by memory, and inshallah ta'ala you're ready to read to a teacher. The second way is that actually you're finding that you're still kind of struggling, in which case that's fine also. Like I said, different people have different needs, and so therefore what you're going to do is you're going to take it down verse by verse and start to memorize it in the way that you can see on the screen. Now I'm going to break this down for you, inshallah ta'ala, on the next slide so that we have a practical example for method number 2. So if you just kind of know it, alhamdulillah, it's okay. You don't really need to worry anymore. But for those of you that need some more help or some more guidance, then basically what you will do is as we come onto the next screen, you're going to do what we call the 5 to 3 rule. The 5 to 3 rule. So we've got pathway 2 here, Surah Al-Mulk, just as an example. What you're going to do is you're going to read the first verse 5 times by looking. That's the 5 times. 5 times by looking. Once you've done it 5 times by looking, تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير. And again, second time, third time, fourth time, fifth time by looking. Now you will read it off by heart. You'll know it, inshallah ta'ala. تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير. Done. Verse number 1 is done. Read it 2 or 3 times by heart, and inshallah ta'ala, it's solid. Move on to the next verse. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور. Read that 5 times by looking. Then read it by heart. Inshallah, you'll know it 2, 3 times, and you'll know it. Now what you do is read both verses 3 times together. This is the 5-3 rule. 5 times for every verse that you are memorizing, 3 verses to connect the verses that you have memorized together. So you'll do تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور. Do that 3 times. I'm reading slightly quickly, obviously, just for the sake of this demonstration, but you read at your pace, where you're comfortable, how you're comfortable. You will do that 3 times by looking, joining those two verses together, then read it off by heart a couple of times, and you will know it, inshallah ta'ala. You then move on to verse number 3, again, 5 times by looking, off by heart 2 or 3 times, then again by looking, read verses 1, 2, and 3 now, 3 times by looking. Now, obviously, this is going to take slightly longer, right? And that's why we said, like last week when we did the training webinar, that on the weekend you're going to either need like maybe 30 minutes to 60 minutes. Because if you know it pretty much straight away, it's not even going to take you 30 minutes. And if you need to do it like this, then it may well take you 30 to 40, 50 minutes, depending on your pace. It just means that you just have to do it with slightly more concentration. People are different. Not everyone's the same. There is no right or wrong in this. There is no better or worse in this. Don't think, oh, someone did it straight away and I'm struggling with this. That means I can't do it. No. The fact that you're doing it, whichever way, however, shows that you can do it. Allah Azza wa Jalla didn't give us a method of revising the Quran or memorizing the Quran, nor did the Prophet ﷺ. He left it open, which shows that there's no one way fits all. And that's one of the whole objectives that we're trying to show people in Go Memorize, that there's no just one size fits all. Every person is different, and for every person and individual, there is a method, inshallah ta'ala, that suits them. So this is how you're going to memorize. Once you've done this method, inshallah, then you will be ready to read again to a teacher. So whichever way you're doing it, inshallah ta'ala, on Saturday, by the very latest Sunday, we're going to send out the slots for people. Inshallah, the schedule tomorrow of the slots that are for sisters and for brothers. As I said last week, it's going to be separate Zoom call sessions for each, separate for brothers, separate for sisters. You will check the time slot. that suits you and you can just come in. It's live dropping. You don't have to book. You don't have to do anything. Just the one that suits you. But I would appreciate if you voted for a time, you stick to that time, please. Because we chose times based upon your input and your suggestions. So please, generally speaking, stick to those times. And as I said, inshallah ta'ala, on the Telegram group, we're going to try our very best to have those traffic lights as we showed you, the red, green, amber system, just to show you if it's busy or not. So once you've done that, you're going to come and find that, or just one point then before we continue on to the Zoom sessions, there's going to be either you found this very easy, right? This method was so good for you that the 5, 6, 10 verses, whatever it was that you chose, worked so well that it was actually very, very easy. If that's the case, you can actually increase the number of verses if you want to, right? And we may speak about this, inshallah ta'ala, in our next webinar on the weekend, where we speak about the next step now. So you can tweak that if you want to. I would advise personally, this is just my personal advice. I would say stick to this method for a couple of weeks. If you were comfortable with half a page or one page and you find it quite easy, I would let yourself have the easy wins for a couple of weeks. I would let your confidence build, because what you don't want to do is go too fast and then you find, oh, that was a bit hard and I have to go back. we're we're strange people like that, right? Humans are strange like that. We like wins and we get deflated when things get hard, and sometimes we struggle. I would allow yourself to build up for a while, so do it for a couple of weeks, keep it now, maybe even till half of Ramadan, so that you're getting the wins. It's easy. You're building your confidence. You're like, I can do this now. And then you move on, as opposed to every week you're just tweaking, tweaking, tweaking. That's my personal advice. But if you honestly feel that you're ready, by all means, as I said, we wanted to make Go Memorize flexible in that way that you can determine your journey based on, you knowing yourself best. If you found it challenging, then you do the opposite, right? So if you found like, oh wow, those 5, 6 verses, I actually found them to be difficult, all it means is that you haven't memorized in a while, or you're not ready, or like you haven't reached that same level of continuity that other people have, because maybe they've been doing it for longer and more consistently. Everything you start, right? It's the first time you go to the gym, the first time you try to swim, the first time you try to ride a bike, the first time you try anything, you're going to be rusty, or it's going to take you a while to understand and get into the process. That's all it is. So you can decrease verses by all means, if that you think is easier. Or what I would recommend, if you chose like what you thought was manageable in the first place, you need to increase repetitions. Now I know that's easier said than done, but if you, for example, were doing, the 20 times a day, 4 times after every one of the 5 prayers, you just add another one. That's 5 times. That's 25 now. So you just have to obviously break that up. Ideally you would break that up anyway. But maybe you just need to add 1 or 2 repetitions to every time you sit down to do them, just so that you have more familiarity. All it is just you just need more repetition. And if you can't do that, you're struggling for time anyway, then I would just say decrease the number of ayahs by 1 or 2, depending on how you thought, what you were comfortable with and what you thought you struggled with. Because what will happen with this method is you will naturally know, I was comfortable up to those 3 verses. It was the last one that I found difficult. Like the one that I showed you on Surah Mulk was 5 verses. So maybe up to verse 3, verse 4 was actually okay. It was the last one that was a struggle for me. So then, okay, I'll stick to the 4 verses, right? Those number of lines and verses, that's what I need to be aiming for until I build myself up, and then I can move on. No one starts, by the way, memorizing the Quran half a page or a page at a time. Every child and every person that starts to memorize the Quran memorizes a line, couple of verses. Like this is how they start, and then you build up until you become, inshallah ta'ala, so proficient that you're doing a page or 2 or 3 at a time. Takes time. You just have to be patient. Like with everything in life, you just have to be patient and wait it out. So, progress check. Right? How did everyone find this? You can use the chat if you want. Please do so. You can send in, questions if you have questions. But we just wanted to check with everyone. We just wanted to know how everyone found this week. We just wanted some feedback. Obviously, like on Telegram, we've been getting some feedback, but mostly Telegram is people asking questions, and it's very difficult to keep track. So tell us how you found it, right? Everyone on this webinar, if you can just chat into us, it will be amazing for us to know what you found just in the chat. Just tell us, was it easy, not easy? Was it something which you found, actually, this is like something which is completely different. It's completely reinvented the wheel for me, or changed my whole approach to hifth. Or is there something maybe that you were doing and it just required a tweak? Or maybe you found actually it's not really working yet. And if not, then why? This will help us also. It's something which we can benefit from, obviously, because we have lots of different people from different parts of the world, from different backgrounds, from different abilities. All of this would really be helpful to us. So if you just take a minute or so, inshallah ta'ala, and do that, I would greatly appreciate that. Barakallahu feekum. Okay, so the weekend now, we're going to have the Zoom sessions. And oh, is the Zoom chat disabled? Okay, just 1 second. Okay, I'll just enable the chat. Sorry, folks. I didn't realize that it was not enabled. So I've enabled the chat now, so please go ahead and do that. Um, in terms of the Zoom logistics, so on the weekend, as I said, Saturday, Sunday, inshallah ta'ala, tomorrow we will send out on the Telegram groups under the topics of Zoom for sisters and Zoom for brothers. We will send out the schedule for the weekend, the sessions. All sessions will be in UK times. So please obviously convert accordingly. If you're not in the UK, please convert accordingly. We want to keep the topics on Telegram relatively, like confined so that like it's easy just to keep track for everyone. So the Zoom for sisters and brothers, please don't ask lots of questions there or anything. If there are questions, ask them in the questions topic. Leave that just so that it's easy. Anyone that goes in immediately sees the schedule and sees the link for Zoom. So it's not just going to be clogged up with hundreds of messages and then people have to scroll all the way back to find something. Let's leave that pretty clutter free. We have a questions topic or a pathway topic for any other questions and issues that you use. Once you see the Zoom link and you're ready, you'll click on the Zoom link. What will happen is you will find yourself in a meeting. So it won't be a webinar like this. Zoom has webinars and Zoom has meetings. I'm sure many of you have used Zoom before anyway, but you have slightly different ways of using Zoom. That will be a meeting. And what will happen, just like before today, you went into a waiting area, and it said, we're waiting for the webinar to begin. You'll be added into a waiting room. One of the reasons you're going to be in a waiting room is because one of some of the feedback that we got, and like I said, you please be patient with us because we're trying to take on your feedback on board and then trying to adjust our logistics accordingly. If it's easy for us or possible for us to do, we try to do it. So one of the things that we found is some people were saying that they were reluctant to read in front of others, a bit shy, maybe a bit hesitant, and they would prefer a one-to-one session. Obviously, it's difficult to do a one-to-one session when there are so many students wanting to read. So what we decided is that we would have a waiting area, a waiting room enabled for the Zoom call. And what will then happen is that the teacher will bring you in one at a time to read. Now, when you are in the Zoom session and you enter the waiting room, the list is in chronological order. First come, first serve. So if you come in first, your name will be at the top. The second person will be. So automatically it gets sorted by Zoom. That's automatic. So you don't have to worry about someone being, someone's name being ahead of yours. If you entered, you will be the top one first, and likewise everyone that comes then in sequential order. The Zoom sessions are going to be either with a single teacher or multiple teachers. So some Zoom sessions, we only have one teacher. Some Zoom sessions, you may find 2, 3, or 4 teachers. Now, as you're waiting in the waiting room, you just practice your target verses, your ayahs. You just make sure that you're ready to read when you're called upon. And when you're called upon, if there's a single teacher, he or she will admit you individually. So you will pretty much have a one-to-one session with them. No one else will be in that Zoom session other than you and the teacher and maybe an admin person from our side. Everyone else will still be in the waiting room. You will come in, the teacher will ask you what you're reading, you'll read to them, and then you can leave the meeting. You'll exit the call because you're done, alhamdulillah, you're done and you're finished and you're out. The other way is that if there's going to be multiple teachers, then we will have set out breakout rooms. Now, if there's a breakout room, what it means is that in the meeting, Zoom meeting, we've added 2 or 3 separate rooms. Those are individual rooms, they're private rooms. So what the teachers are going to do is they're going to admit you to the call when it's your turn to read, then assign you to the breakout room. Now, when you're assigned to a breakout room, Zoom will give you a notification saying, do you accept the invitation to join the breakout room? You have to say yes because it's a privacy thing, I think, something to do with privacy and what have you. So you have to accept. If you don't accept, he can't or she can't actually force you into the breakout room. You just stay in the general Zoom meeting area. So please just make sure that even if it's taking 15, 20 minutes for the teacher to get to your turn, just make sure that you have your phone or your laptop close by that you can, if there's a notification, you see it, just so that we're not, wasting time. And otherwise, the teacher's just going to have to skip you and go to the next student. So please just work with us for that part. So once again, you go into the breakout room. Again, it will be private one-to-one with that teacher in that breakout room. You will read to the teacher, and then again you will exit the meeting, and you're done, inshallah ta'ala, for that day. Right? Please don't just stay on the Zoom call, because obviously, we just want to make sure we get through everyone. If people just stay on there, then people may get confused. The teachers may not know, which teacher you read to, especially if there's multiple teachers, gets confusing. Once you're done, please leave the meeting, inshallah ta'ala, and that way we are done. So I hope that's like very easy and self-explanatory. Really, there's not much for you to do as the user other than to click on the Zoom link and just to wait. Once you are on that Zoom link and waiting, inshallah ta'ala, if there's a notification, you just check that. Otherwise, our teachers, inshallah, will do the rest, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Another thing that we are also going to start, again, because of feedback, some of you are saying that the sessions don't always work for you in terms of time. I know people are busy, people are still going to be working, people are still, we have time differences, people are studying, other, and other things also. And some people just don't really want to read live. I would personally recommend that you read to a teacher live. Even if you're a bit shy and embarrassed, over time you will get used to it, and that initial shyness, inshallah, will quickly dissipate. The reason why is that there is nothing that can substitute reading to a live teacher and getting live feedback. Nothing. And that's why every Quran school and madrasa and masjid has a teacher and students, right? You see all those kids and children reading. The reason why they read to a teacher live is because there's nothing that can substitute that. That's why we were so, we really want to push these live sessions. That's why we've gone to all this effort to try to organize it, to make it easy for you, to make it as private as possible for you, and so on, because I think it's the best way for you to learn. However, I understand, and we understand that some people just don't want to do that, or it's not going to suit them, or whatever reason. Or some people, for example, can do this weekend, but next weekend they're traveling. We understand. So what we're also going to do is allow you to send us recordings. Now, these recordings is going to be via a software that's found on the internet. It's nothing to do with us or Go Memorize. It's a software that's available for free, called Reverb Record. So we will, inshallah ta'ala, send out a link and a form. It's very easy, like it's really simple. We will give you instructions, inshallah, that are very easy to use. Inshallah, we're going to do a short video tutorial also that you can watch, just so that you know. And really, it's so easy that once you've done it once or twice, it'll be done. You can use these voice recordings, especially for the weekend and even during the week if you want to. However, once you send us the recordings, one of our teachers will listen. They will give you feedback within 24 to 48 hours. So it's not going to be instantaneous and live like the live sessions would be, but we will get back to you, inshallah ta'ala. So you can actually just send a voice recording. And again, this will be completely private. So you only send it to Go Memorize. No one else will see this. No one else on the Telegram group. No one else. This will be only private. The only person that will access that recording is the teacher. And the only person that will hear the feedback of the teacher is you. It is completely private. So no one else will have access to this. And again, we're trying to respect people's privacy. We're trying to respect people's sensitivity to not wanting to read out loud in front of groups and other people. And since sometimes on the Telegram you have your friends there, you have people there that you may not want to read in the same session. That's all fine. So we have tried to find a form and a way. And alhamdulillah, one of our sisters who's actually on the Go Memorize team, she played an amazing role in helping us find this and dealing with this and the logistics for this and so on. So may Allah Azza wa Jalla reward her for her time and effort. She did this voluntarily for us, and I think it's an amazing option. So this is also something that we will put out, inshallah ta'ala, hopefully tomorrow. So then you will have a choice. Like I said, we don't want you to have any excuse. Any excuse. However you feel comfortable, please just read and learn Quran and memorize Quran. That's all I said. As I said to you, and when we began, all we ask from you is commitment. We've tried to do everything we can from our side, by Allah's permission and through Allah's help, to make this as easy and as painless as possible for you. All we want you to do is read Quran, memorize Quran, and make sure that you're getting your Quran checked and tested. That's all. And so please, like whichever way you feel comfortable. I'm telling you what I think is better, but again, it's up to you. If you want to do the other one, please by all means do so. So again, that will be sent out inshallah ta'ala the on the Telegram groups. We'll give you all the details, the instructions, the links, everything inshallah ta'ala will be there, so that if that's what you want to do, that is also a choice that you may have bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. You would have to make a free account on that website. It's completely free. There is a limited number of recordings. So we'll mention some of the other things. There's a subscription also that you can pay if you want unlimited recordings or what have you. That's up to you. I'm not telling you to do either thing. We're not making a penny from it. We have nothing to do with this at all. So if you want to do that just to make your life easy, by all means. You don't want to do it, it's a free account. You can have up to 10 recordings, and then it will automatically just continue to update that inshallah ta'ala. Okay, excellent. So moving on. What's next? Inshallah ta'ala, we are going to have a webinar, our training number 3 webinar. So today wasn't really training, it was just logistics and update. Our training webinar number 3 is going to be inshallah ta'ala on Saturday. So not tomorrow, the day after. Saturday, 10:30 p.m. This is now, we want to do things, as I said, step by step. We want to tell you the theory. We want you to practice it and know it before we move on to the next step in the theory. I know on the Telegram, some people have been very eager because some people are obviously, more advanced in this. They've been doing it more, and they're more fluent in, or they're more like, they know how to memorize better and easier. And so therefore they're eager. I understand that also. But inshallah ta'ala, we will tell you the next step now. So what we will do on Saturday is we will tell you how to now revise. What's the new revision cycle? So remember, we talked about these 3 cogs of memorization: the target ayahs, new revision, old revision. Well, we're going to move on to the second cog now. What do we do with this new revision? You just learned these verses this week. Inshallah, on the weekend, you'll read them to us. What do we do with them now? We're going to, on Monday, go on to the next set of verses and target ayahs and start repeating them. But what about these ones? So we're going to tell you that. We're also going to tell you how to join between these 2 elements. So when how to link between this week's verses and next week's verses. This week's target ayahs and next week's target ayahs. So we're going to tell you about some of this now, and then we're going to give you next week to implement that also, to practice that, so that you can start building this in. And then the week after, inshallah, we'll move on to the old revision. So this Saturday, not tomorrow, but the day after, in about 40 hours time, 10:30 p.m. UK time. It's a bit later because of Taraweeh and so on, obviously. So after Isha, after Taraweeh, 10:30 p.m. inshallah ta'ala. That's something which is very important now, because half of memorization is revision. You can memorize all you want, but if you don't revise over time, you will lose your memorization. So inshallah ta'ala, we will tell you the way to do that. We'll give you practice sessions, we'll give you resources, all the things that we've been doing this week to help you to memorize. We will do inshallah ta'ala something similar when it comes to that. As I said, throughout Ramadan, from Monday, then we will have daily drop-in sessions for you just to read to a teacher, to repeat your verses by looking. We're also going to be doing at least 2 webinars a week. So we will always have every week, inshallah, a training webinar where we will speak about different ideas like revision and so on, and also some of the challenges and some of the common mistakes people make and what have you. Well, we'll go through this and also answering your questions, obviously. And then we will also have 1 webinar a week where we want to have a guest on board, some of the famous scholars of the West and other people that are known for their Quran or have been on the journey in different ways, so that inshallah you can benefit from their experience also. I think that will be very informative and very beneficial. So that's also what we have planned for the month of Ramadan. Okay, so that's the end of what I had to say. I will take any questions, inshallah. If there are any questions, please feel free to send them to me. Okay, some ayahs or parts of ayahs are hard on the tongue. It doesn't flow easily whilst reading by looking, even after day 4. Can we repeat those parts several times to help get the flow? Also, sometimes some ayahs are similar to other previous length ayahs, and I keep on accidentally saying the words of other ayahs whilst reading by looking. Is there something that could help in this situation? Yeah, so for the first part of the question, which is words that are difficult to read on the tongue, you just need to keep repeating them individually by themselves a number of times. It would be a good idea to listen to it from a reciter and repeat after the reciter, or to get someone that knows how to read, maybe a teacher or an imam or someone that's done this already, and just get them to listen to you a few times as you untie the knot of your tongue. There are certain words like that in the Quran, no doubt. It just requires for you just to concentrate on them a bit more. Also, active reading, as we said, is very important. So even with the second part of the question, when you have similar verses, a very important part of that is active reading. So what you have to try to do with verses that are similar, especially if they are close by together on the same page, you have to try to see the differences between the two. Sometimes the verses are similar, but there's going to be a change. So sometimes there's a waw and a fa. So the fa comes before the waw in the alphabet. So you know, okay, the first one's got the fa, the second one's got the waw. It may be as something as simple as that. You have to try to find a method to link something. So it may be a mnemonic that you make for yourself. It may be the meaning. Allah Azza wa Jalla at the beginning says this in that verse. Then in this one, the meaning is this. So you know there's a trigger there already. I will give you, for example, one where there's three verses that end. All of them speak about the punishment of Allah for the non-believers. And Allah Azza wa Jal says, Adabun Azim, Adabun Alim, Adabun Muhin. Alim, Alim with the Alif, and then Muhin. The way that I learned that from my teachers is if you were to take the first letter of each one of those three words, Ain, Alif, and Mim, and put them together, it would spell the word Am. Am means general. It doesn't really have anything to do with the meaning of it. It's just something to trigger you. So now, whenever I come across those verses, I don't have to. I know the am is the trigger word for me. I know that the first one's going to be with the ain azim, the second one's going to be with alif alim, the third one with the mim muhin. So that's what you have to do. It is very difficult to give a one rule because every similar verse in the Quran is going to be slightly different from other verses that are also similar in their own context. So you have to try to figure out, and inshallah, this is something which we maybe in one of the forthcoming webinars will go into in more detail. Okay, I'm currently doing hifz with the teacher online twice a week, typically memorizing 5 to 6 ayahs each lesson, as well as going back to consolidate. We've been working from 30th juz, alhamdulillah. I'm currently on Surah Al-Jinn. My question is, for me, theory only seems to be the best option. Would you agree? I find the methodology offered is as great as my ability to recall previous memorization is lacking some, and it feels like a lot. My problem is I can memorize fast, alhamdulillah, but struggling to retain. So as I said, one of the reasons why people struggle to retain also is because they haven't done enough repetition to make it easy for them to retain. So you'll find that some students can memorize 3 pages a day, but after 3 days of memorizing 3 pages a day, 9 pages that they memorized in those 3 days, if you ask them about the first 3 pages that they memorized, it will be very weak. And that's because they didn't do enough repetitions and leave it also. If you want my personal opinion, I know people are very eager and everyone wants to finish. That's just human nature, right? You just want to get to the finish line and be done. And that's why one of the first things that I said to you when we did the mindset is don't be eager. It's ibadah. The companions used to take years over the Quran, not caring or being preoccupied about when and how they will finish. As long as they were on the journey, they were happy because it's all ibadah and worship. If you want my personal opinion, unless you need to finish quickly for a reason, like for example, some of our youngsters, they're memorizing the Quran, they want to get it done before they start having the exams at school because they won't have much time. That's okay. That's that reason. But if you don't have that type of strict deadline pressure, I would say take it more easy than rushing, because when you rush, you'll find that you have to go back and revise even harder. Whereas if you're taking it easy at a good pace, but easy pace, and you can retain as you go along, your hifth will be actually stronger. So you may find that after doing 3 days of repetition, 6 repetitions, you can actually memorize the verses that we gave you. And we'll actually speak about people who have that ability and can add a second cycle in the week, inshallah ta'ala, also, inshallah, in a forthcoming webinar. But if you were to just keep that 100 times. I know, for example, some of my teachers, even though they could memorize after 2 days, 40 repetitions, they didn't. They would just stick with the 100 repetitions, irrespective. And they would just keep to that because they knew at the end their hifz would just be stronger overall. So it is really a judgment call for you, depending on what you think is best for you. So you kind of have to choose between that. But that's why we recommend the 5 days of repetitions 100 times. I think it is a good place for you to start. As you become more prolific and as you start building a good revision cycle, then inshallah ta'ala you will be able to increase. Is listening and repeating the same as reading? It depends. If you are listening as you have the Quran open in front of you and then you're actively repeating, then yes. But if you're just listening and repeating, unless it's like a child that can't read fluently and so they have to do it like that, it's not what I would recommend. The more senses that you can use, the better. So if you're listening and reading by looking and you're actively doing that, then it's okay. But if you're just listening and you're just going to repeat, then I wouldn't advise that. I would say read yourself because then you're looking and you're reading. And if you want to add the listening to that component, that's fine also. Will this method work for similar ayahs too, or do we need to bring in an extra method? As I said, inshallah, we will speak about this. I will tell you that I have teachers, there's two methodologies that I found amongst my teachers. Some of them said it is the same methodology. You just repeat, 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 repeat. I asked one of my teachers, Sheikh Surah Al-Rahman, every other verse is فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. How did you remember what comes after that? Because it's just so similar. Surah Al-Rahman, it has like 20 repetitions of the same verse. What comes next? He said, I just repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated until it became like Fatiha for me. That's a methodology, by the way. That actually works. But you would have to do that for like probably like hundreds of repetitions. But it would eventually work for you. That's one way. And the other way is, no, like what I said to you, someone's going to have a system, they're going to have a mnemonic, they're going to have a trigger word, and or they're going to know the meaning, and that way they're going to memorize. So both are, and inshallah ta'ala, we will speak about this, inshallah, in more detail in a further session. I find reading loudly 20 times difficult due to voice problems, so I have to read quietly too with moving lips. Previously, repeating 2 to 3 lines daily, I managed 1 page a week, but now half a page even takes so long. After this trial, can I revert to my old method, repeating my 2 to 3 lines? But we'll be repeating new lines every day. So how much should the daily repeat? So you can, like I said, if you're finding that the half a page was too much, you can by all means go back to the 2 to 3 lines. But I would say continue the 20 repetitions. Now, when it comes to your pitch of voice, you don't have to read too loud. You can just read at a normal pace, the way that you would normally read. You don't have to read loud. So long as you're not reading in your mind or whispering. So some people read like this and they can't hear themselves and they're not audible at all. That is a mistake. And usually those people will find that they have many mistakes in their memorization, many mistakes, whether they realize it or they don't. Or if it comes to reading out loud to a teacher, they will find that they will struggle over time because you have to read out loud. It has to be audible. It doesn't have to be loud. You don't have to make everyone in the room hear, but it has to be audible enough that you can actually hear it yourself and it's done. So if it's something which you have a health condition, by all means read it quietly, but not quietly to yourself that you can't hear it, or it's too quiet, or it's in your mind. That would be I think, a mistake. I usually memorize 1 page a week with a different method. I'm already having trouble keeping with the 20 recitations. What do you advise in this situation? So um if you're, like I said to you, if there's a method that you found that worked for you other than this method, by all means, I mean, you can do that method if you want. There's, like I said, there are many methods and many of them work. um Maybe what you need to do for this method though is maybe you need to do less than a page a week. um or you need to, maybe, I mean, you could try, for example, rather than doing 20, you do 15, so that might work for you. So 20 is an optimal number. For some people, like, they could do it with 15 or 10 if they have that ability. So every person is different, for example, as I said. So really, it just comes down to you. You can try, as we said, you can tweak this slightly. Do less lines, do more repetitions, do less repetitions, see what works for you. But as a methodology, I would stick to this particular system of it has to be multiple repetitions. If you can space them, so if it's too difficult to do all at once, then just space them throughout the day, right? That's something which you could do also. Um, okay, so I'm one of those forcing myself not to memorize. Someone saying, "Mashallah, it's very good, very beneficial. Something new jumps out from each page, from the page for every repetition. It's also helping me improve my tajweed. And I'm one of those people forcing myself not to memorize as yet." You don't have to force yourself, by the way. If you happen to just memorize, it's okay, let it happen. But just continue to do repetitions, because then by Saturday it will be so easy, inshallah ta'ala, for you. So you don't have to force yourself not to memorize, right? But you're not actively memorizing. That's the point. So you're just repeating, repeating. And that's the whole point, by the way. the idea is by Saturday, it would be pretty easy for you. It would almost be that you hardly have to put in any effort because you've done it so well already, right? So we've used this for like with young children, our own young children. So, if they've done so many repetitions, like within 15 minutes, they can memorize a page sometimes. Like I'm talking about young children, 8, 9, 10 years old. They can do a page of memorization, even though their reading's not the strongest because of the amount of repetitions that they've done over a number of days. So the idea is that it should actually start to happen anyway. So you don't have to fight that process, let it happen. But you're just not actively doing it until the weekend. What do we do if we break our wudu whilst holding the mushaf? You take a break or make wudu, come back and continue. Can we recite faster with hadar? Or are we, once we are familiar with the page after several repetitions, it's tough to recite slow? Yeah, I mean, you can once you're proficient at it. The whole idea, remember, is that, by the way, also. The whole idea of this is that then the first day you're going to be not very fluent. It's going to take a bit longer. You're getting used to the verses. The second day, slightly better, but still it's a bit slow. By the third and fourth day now, it's getting so easy that you know it and you're getting fluent, and so your pace is naturally going to pick up anyway. This is all part of the process. This is why this method, mashallah, tabarakallah, is such an amazing method. This is all meant to happen. So all of these things that you're telling me, is this is actually what's meant to happen as you are reading. So don't worry, you're not doing anything wrong. This is the method working for you, inshallah ta'ala. I'm reading 20 times a day, but not sure that I'm remembering it. So should I reduce the number of ayat I'm memorizing zalzala? Well, try it now, right? So if you'll be doing 20 times a day until Saturday, then try to memorize on Saturday using the two methods that I told you, either one, whichever one works for you, and see how it goes. And if it was, then yeah, maybe Zalzala was too much for you in the first instance. You can do half of the first half of Zalzala first, and then the second half, or you can break it down. But I would wait, right? See how it works on the weekend, and you may well be surprised. I've memorized Bayin and Iqra, but unable to retain well. Now I'm repeating again, inshallah. I have to repeat Qadr too to keep the flow as I have memorized Qadr. Yes, if as we said, if you want to go over some of the previous surahs that are weak, by all means you are able to do so. When will the first lesson be? So if you mean on the weekend, on the Saturday, we will send out the schedule inshallah ta'ala tomorrow. So I don't want to like tell anyone anything until we send out the schedule, just in case we change the timing and then someone gets upset. So Jazakumullah khairan. I will inshallah ta'ala conclude here. Barakallahu fikum. Inshallah, I hope to see everyone on Saturday, Sunday. You're coming into the sessions. Obviously, it may not necessarily be me there, but I will be in a number of the brothers' sessions and other teachers also. And obviously, the sisters will have their teachers. We hope to see you all, inshallah. And, all of you, mashallah, doing an amazing job with your memorized lines. And then, inshallah, please remember Saturday is very important. Please try to attend live. If not, then obviously all of this is going to be on YouTube, inshallah ta'ala, that you can listen to how we now involve or add the revision cycle, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So, jazakumullah khairan, barakallahu feekum. May Allah Azza wa Jal bless you all, keep you safe. May Allah Azza wa Jal strengthen you and allow you to continue to be from the people of the Quran. Barakallahu feekum. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.